Welcome to the Food Professor podcast, episode 32. We're back. I'm Michael LeBlanc.
And I'm Sylvain Charlebois.
Well, we're back. We're back. Now, that's a scene from my favorite movie, The Hangover. If you remember that movie, they find him. We're back. We are
That's
back
right.
after a summer hiatus. So great to see you. For those who are listening, check out our YouTube and you can see what we look like after a summer. Sylvain, how are you? How was your summer? Let's just start there.
It's been great. I mean, we did spend 2 months at the cottage. The weather was unbelievable. We bike a lot as a family, and we need sun. we don't need rain to bike, and there was actually a lot of sun this summer, so we were really lucky. We took advantage of the nice weather. We went out, visited many new restaurants, visited some friends and family. It felt normal.
Right.
Thank
Very
goodness. How about you? I mean,
Yeah.
you went to Banff in the smoke.
Oh, that's right. That's right. And as a family, we went to Banff, and I've never been. I'd been to Kananaskis, but I'd never been to Banff. And then we went to Lake Louise. And the first couple of days, we might as well have been in Mississauga. You couldn't see anything. There's so much smoke. Like the mountains were, and the locals. We asked the locals, "Is this normal?" He said, "This is the worst we've ever seen it." So it was like 11 out of 10 on the health warning scale. We were wearing masks. Which we do generally, but outside we don't. But we were wearing masks because there was so much smoke.
Unbelievable.
It was unbelievable.
We were wearing masks for two reasons: the virus and smoke. Yeah,
that's right. And yeah, for sure. And I mean, we went golfing because the family were not wearing as a family we're not wearing masks, but we wore the mask because the smoke was like it's when you woke up in the morning, you walked outside, it felt like you're in a cedar forest near a campfire.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah.
But then on day 2 or day 3, it started raining, and the smoke cleared. Now it was rainy and cold. It was like 9 degrees, 10 degrees. Great hiking weather. So it was perfect. And any Canadian who hasn't done it, it's got to be on your list of things to do for sure. So I'd highly encourage. So the beauty of Canada is breathtaking. Everywhere, yeah. East Coast, West Coast. I'd never been to Banff. So listen, I got a great episode back today again after a summer hiatus. We've got we're kicking off a great interview. Serge Boulanger, Senior Vice President of Procurement, Corporate Brands at Metro. And by the way, in case you missed it over the summer, for one of our bonus episodes, I had the opportunity to interview Vice President and Director of Metro's Corporate Brands, Marie-France Gibson, and Director Paula Deane. Great interview. Learned a lot about. I'm very impressed with the team, with their experience. They got a big portfolio, right? When you start adding up all their sub-brands and brands and brands upon brands, very impressive. And we talked to Serge about that and about his thoughts on the current state of things. So that's really good. And we have a whole new segment we're kicking off, which is right now I'm calling it Trying Stuff. We got to come up with a better name. We're trying stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Food, though beverages too, because our next episode is actually a beverage or two. So we'll get into that. Let's jump in. So when I think back to where we left off in the summer, what major thing has happened? I can think of a bunch of them. Let's start with we've got this little thing coming up in a few days, the Canadian election. So there's been an election called. I've seen a bit of commentary from you on Twitter. I think you listened to a debate around agriculture. Tell me what your impression is of the top issues. Are the top issues even being dealt with in the election? Are they on the table? And give me your sense of the election from a food industry perspective so far.
Well, often, I mean, people actually are disappointed by the fact that agriculture or agri-food doesn't get a whole lot of attention during a campaign. And frankly, in 35 days, you have so much to cover. My expectations are frankly very low. I don't know what your expectations are, Michael, but my expectations are often very low. But we've heard the terms like food inflation, food autonomy, food sovereignty. And if you look at all of the major platforms out there offered to Canadians, actually all major parties do have thought about agriculture, agri-food in light of what has happened the last 18 months. In fact, actually, in some parties are actually advertising, talking about food or food inflation. In fact, by one party in particular is using some of our data at the lab. They're not stating the lab per se, but they're stating a media which has reported on our data, which is interesting. But overall, I think the cost of living is top of mind for a lot of people for a lot of reasons. I mean, of course, there is food. Food is a necessity of life, but there's also lodging. I think a lot of people are concerned about access to properties, and of course that does impact your prospect as an adult moving forward when you start a career. And I can see it with my students at the university. I mean, right now I'm back on campus teaching in front of human beings, my food
That's
policy class, which
that's
is
great.
great.
You called
However,
that you called that once a candy of a course, right? It's one of your favorite things to do. So
oh
I wanted to I saw the picture of you getting ready for your first day at school. I almost imagine you with a little lunchbox or something, but um,
yeah, wait.
it's great. I mean,
Oh
it's
yeah,
great
no,
to see it.
and of course I'm teaching in front of students with masks and everything. But listen, it's a little compromise. It's not much, but I do talk to students before and after class about their careers, and I mean there's some fog out there. I mean there's some uncertainty
Mm,
out there in terms of
mm,
what they're looking for, and they are renting, most of them, and they're not sure exactly what's going to happen with their careers and how they can afford to live moving forward. So
mm,
I think it really, in my mind, I think food inflation has attracted a lot of attention even during debates. So we'll see how things go next week.
yep,
I'm hoping that the outcome will serve Canadians well. We don't know what the outcome is going to be.
mm,
My only concern was the English debate. I'm not entirely convinced that the format really helped
mm.
Canadians better
No.
understand what parties have to offer. It was more about bickering and allowing moderators to really dictate the pace. I don't know. Did you watch the debate, Michael?
Yeah, I watched it start to finish. Actually, I'm a big fan of political debates. I always remember that some moments that make or break elections. If you remember the John Turner, Brian Mulroney, you had an option moment. Like
Yeah.
sometimes there's big moments in debates, sometimes less so, but there's only one debate, so bring it. I was impressed by a couple of the leaders who I just frankly didn't know at all. Their composure,
And I mean,
um,
Paul is one
and
I was impressed
yeah,
with,
I think if you had to pick a leader who
who had a
for me,
moment.
yeah, she had a moment. I knew nothing. I literally knew a little bit, but I probably knew more negative stuff, the dissension in the party, but I didn't really understand her as a person, and she was a very
Well,
impressive
the
person there.
party's a mess, but she's a pretty strong leader. You know.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on in the party. That's for another podcast. But and then the format just didn't feel like a debate to me. I don't know what it felt like, but I think it was sniping and anyway, it wasn't great. I didn't think it helped me really think through some of the issues. It surfaced a few,
Well, for the
just
prime
on
minister, for
leadership.
example, his role was to defend his track record and as prime minister, and he just didn't have a chance, really.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so it
and
was
what I thought, you're absolutely right. What I thought is one of the biggest issues of the campaign is the fact that there's a campaign to begin with, right?
yes,
Why did you call an election? And that I thought was the issue that he's already as an incumbent stepping forward on a very weak platform, because like, okay, why'd you call an election? Why did we need to be doing this other than
yeah.
you wanted to you as a politician saw your opportunity perhaps to go for you know a majority because of your handling of the pandemic and other issues, but I'm not sure it's going to work out for him.
I gotta tell you, Michael, I'm shocked that both the Liberals and Conservatives are in a deadlock, given the fact that Mr. Trudeau has been campaigning for 18 months steady,
Yeah,
giving
yeah,
away more than $400 billion. And he,
yeah,
he was on our screens every day almost
yeah.
for 18
I,
months. And still, we're looking at a deadlock. It's
well,
incredible. I'm shocked.
yeah. Well, it's the Churchill phenomenon. If you think back to just post Second World War, Churchill won the war but lost the election. He
Yeah.
was booted out in 1946 as the economy ravaged London. So anyway, so listen,
He did win a Nobel afterwards, so that's a
right.
vindication for him. I'm not sure Trudeau actually has the capacity to
Mm,
win the Nobel in
yeah, I
literature
don't think so.
of
Yeah,
all Nobels.
yeah, I don't think so. You talked about a couple of things I want to pivot on. Actually, I was going to ask you about, and let's go in two different directions. One, you talked a lot about over the summer. You seem to be busier than whatever. Maybe you talked about shrinkflation, and so
Yes.
for the people, let's talk. I explained it to my family, and everybody kind of goes, "Huh, you're right." So you had examples. So A, let's talk about shrinkflation, and then B, let's talk about the prices. You called it of the trifecta. You called it the creatively made me think of Deanne Brisebois' term for you, Hollywood Sylvain, the spook point, which got you on every TV. But let's start with shrinkflation. Explain what that is to the people and what
Yeah.
your thoughts are. What's happening?
Yeah, so shrinkflation is not new, really. It's been around for decades, really. But we always seem to see more shrinkflation cases when commodity prices go up because input costs in processing do go up eventually. And so manufacturers, they tend to protect their price points and will reduce quantity. So as a consumer, the outcome of shrinkflation is basically to walk into a grocery store and see the illusion that you're buying the same quantity at the same price, but you're not, because they've played around with formats, with packaging, and of course the strategy will vary from one product line, from one SKU to another. Sometimes they will play around with packaging. For example, with which juices, they'll actually just change the bottle. They'll create some sort of space in at the bottom of the bottle, so you don't have to put as much juice in the bottle, for example. Sometimes they actually they will shrink bite sizes, but they won't reduce the quantity right away. So over 1 year, and the whippets are an example right now. Instead of 15 whippets, you get 18, same quantity. But I bet you, Michael, in 6 months to a year from now, they'll go back to 15 with smaller bite-size whippets, reducing quantity. So shrinkflation is, it's not just a matter of changing a format or packaging in an instant. It really carries on for several years. And so to monitor that is very difficult to do. And that's why most consumers just aren't noticing really all that much until
Yeah,
you talk to them about it. And then they have that ha moment. They say, oh,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
right. It's
Oh,
like
you're right.
Buttergate, Buttergate, all of
Yeah,
a sudden people realize, oh,
right,
yeah, my butter is harder.
right. It's the epitome of the frog in the boiling water, right? The frog will just sit there for a while, not noticing small incremental little changes. And again, to be clear for the people, shrinkflation is about paying the same for a product, but you're getting less. I mean, that's
That's
basically
right.
what you're talking about in some
And
way,
it's
shape,
not
or form.
exactly, and it's not illegal. And frankly, I don't know about you, Michael, but I don't really have a problem with it because all the
Mm,
information is disclosed. It's all there. And even when
yeah,
you walk into a grocery store, you do have your price per 100 milliliters, 100 grams. It's all there.
yep,
It's always there
yep,
for you to assess. So there are no
yeah,
surprises. It's just people tend to take it the wrong way. I've always argued that shrinkflation could actually help our food waste problem, because one of the problems that we face when it comes to food
mm,
waste, and if you remember Laurie Nichols, when she actually came on our podcast, I think it was
yep,
last year, she did mention that we do buy too much food
yeah,
based on our life, our quality of life, our pace. And
yeah.
so shrinkflation may actually end up allowing consumers to waste less food, even though it is contributing to inflation. My only concern with shrinkflation really is with StatsCan. I'm not convinced, even though they're telling Canadians that they are monitoring the effects of shrinkflation. I don't think they do very
You've got a new
properly.
partner. You posted you got a new partner where you've suspected this for a while, but talk about this new partnership that you've got that's kind of trying to figure out this price thing around what
Yeah, I mean
StatsCan does.
this great firm out of Saskatchewan. It's called Better Cart, and they actually monitor prices and sizes. And so over
Oh,
the summer, we actually went through the entire food basket, monitored by StatsCan, only to realize that 70% of quantities on their list you can't even find on the market anymore. They're just obsolete.
interesting.
Yeah, so I don't know how they're
Interesting.
converting prices. Like this morning, for example, StatsCan came out with August data on inflation, and so inflation is up. There seems to be a lag with StatsCan, so we're expecting numbers to creep up in the fall to match kind of the forecast we basically published almost a year
Hmm.
ago.
Well, just on that note, I know a lot of senior people at Stats Canada. We talked to them about retail statistics. You just gave me a great idea for a guest, and Stats Canada has joined me to talk about their numbers. And okay, that's a good
Oh,
guest idea. We
maybe
should get.
actually that's a good idea. I've never thought about inviting StatsCan on our podcast,
Yeah,
but they are very. I don't know about your experience, but they're very difficult to deal with. As soon as you're challenging some of the methodology, because I mean I think the methodology is pretty clear. It's where it gets fuzzy. It's how they capture the data,
yeah,
and
yeah,
they say that they actually rely on grocers because they do capture data in stores, but
yeah.
they're never clear on brands, banners, and you know this, Michael. I mean, prices will vary from one brand to another, from one banner
Banner
to
to banner.
another.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
my experience with them, to answer your query, has been, they're actually more willing to talk about their processes than one might imagine, right? They will join you and explain what they do. Sometimes they're bound by confidentiality, and they're very freaked about giving you any information that might reveal how the data, specifics about the data. I haven't found them wildly flexible in terms of will change your ideas, but sometimes they are. We've been dealing with it on the retail side because I'll give you an example. When StatsCan reports e-commerce data, you know what they don't report in the e-commerce data? Amazon. Amazon is not in
interesting,
Stats Canada e-commerce data. You know why? Because they consider it a warehouse, an importer. Right. So
interesting.
and because they're not domiciled here. So they say
Right.
everything is imported. Wayfair, same thing. So if you think about e-commerce data, wow, that's 15, $20 billion missing from
At least.
e-commerce,
At
at
least.
least, right?
Yeah.
At least. And there's other things, but hey, we're always thankful for Stats Canada for actually doing that data. We had no data on e-commerce. Now at least we have data that's
So they're
very good.
tracking e-commerce data without Amazon and Wayfair. That's great. That's very accurate.
Yeah. So the good news is we believe it's directionally quite solid. Like the numbers are solid. We just say, but you got the number. The number isn't the number. So we at Retail Council of Canada, when I do my work there, we take the number and basically double it because and but the right, but the percentage growth we say that when I talk to retailers about the percentage growth, which was 70%, they reported 70%, 70 from 2020 to between 2020 and 2019. eMarketer, other analysts say between 70 and 75, including Amazon. So they're not far off that way, but the absolute numbers are not
Oh yeah.
guided. Anyway,
What
we're
if
off
what
on
if
a bit.
But with inflation, I mean, I kind of it's for us at the lab. StatsCan is really just an indicator. We're using other sources like Nielsen IQ, Better Card to kind of really understand what actually is
Right.
going on out there. Like butter is another good example, Michael. Butter, according to StatsCan, right now, butter is up 2.8% since January. But according to
Hmm.
Better Card, it's up 35.5%. 35.
35%.
Yes. And I believe
Wow.
it because I mean, you remember with Buttergate, uh, the fact they were using palmite to reduce costs, and of course with supply management. And I've always argued it's very easy to fix the problem. Do the right thing, you'll be compensated. It's a no
Yeah.
brainer for farmers, and that's exactly what's happening right now. So
Well,
I
you've
was
introduced.
expecting better. I was expecting butter prices to go up in Canada as a result of Buttergate, and they have.
Well, you've introduced a new thing in my household. As I've often said, my wife and I, who've been married quite a while, we agree on most things. We disagree on how much champagne to drink, how much turkey to eat. And now we disagree on the butter to buy, because I always buy, thanks to Buttergate, I always buy the more expensive, either organic or grass fed. And my lovely wife comes home with the cheapest butter she could find. I'm like, but
No,
Buttergate, but Buttergate.
you should say,
Um,
"Great, I needed a hammer."
yeah, and I'm trying to cut through it. Of course, I'm very dramatic about it.
Of course.
Trying to cut through it with a chainsaw. Um, a little bit dramatic there.
Yes, a
So
little.
I a little. So three things. I want to get back to food inflation briefly, but on the trifecta, the spook point about chicken,
Yeah.
pork, and meat. Talk about your thoughts on the trifecta.
Yeah, so obviously, as I said this morning, I was looking at CPI numbers, and it's ugly at the meat counter for sure. So when you look at beef prices, on average, they're up about 10.5% so far since January, not year to year, January. Chicken is up, let me see, 10.6%, and pork is actually up at 4%, so it's not that bad. But still,
Hmm.
the chicken portion of the trifecta is really important because it is supply managed, and typically a chicken is pretty stable across the
Hmm.
board. And it's like the tide, as I explained to you before. If chicken goes up, everything else will go up. And what we're noticing is that really consumers are spooked. And the last 12 weeks, volume sales at the meat counter have dropped significantly in Canada, 12 to 17% in some cases, depending on where
Wow.
you are. Yeah, no, it's pretty
Wow.
dramatic. And but here's the thing: vegetable proteins up 3-4%.
Yeah.
So yes, people went out, they went to the restaurant, they're not buying as much retail stuff. I get it, but I actually do think that we've reached a point, and it's similar to 2014. All of a sudden consumers all consider the meat counter to be a pricey place to be.
Huh.
And
Huh.
I think things will calm down, but it is a dangerous place to be for the livestock industry. And of course, farmers are a little bit upset because they're earning more, but really the bulk of profits really do occur in processing and distribution. But let's face it, that's where most of the costs are as well.
Right.
Across the supply chain. So yeah, numbers this morning are pretty high again for
Hmm.
the meat trifecta.
You mentioned produce. I wanted to, just before we go to our interview and before we go to our new product segment, trying stuff.
Yes,
Um, New title TBD. If anyone's got a title idea, send it my way.
that's right.
I want to just touch on some research that the lab released just at the beginning of September about Canadians and produce. 29.3% of Canadians bought enough produce to match recommended amount by Canada's new food guide. So, were you happy with this? I mean, it basically looks like a recognition about consuming produce. But tell me about the study and what your net conclusions were.
Yeah, so I actually work with my friend Vicenta from our Faculty of Agriculture here on this project. Uh, Obviously, we wanted to know exactly how much produce Canadians are consuming versus what is recommended by Health Canada with Canada's food guide, the new food guide, which was presented in 2019. If you remember, Michael, that plate, half of
Yeah,
it
it was
fruits and
veggies.
vegetables right there. Do you? So it's basically 29.3% of Canadians actually admit that they're eating enough produce based on recommendations made by Health Canada. So this is a survey; it's a self-reporting survey. So my guess, it's the percentage is probably lower. So either Canadians are telling
Hmm.
us. This is what we can do, and Health Canada's ambitions are way too high, or we need to do some work in terms of promoting fruits and vegetables during this wonderful year of what's the International Year of Fruits and Vegetables this year.
I, I,
Did you
I
forget
had no,
about that, Michael?
I, I had no idea. But I
There
love
you
your point
go.
about self-reporting bias. It's funny because it makes me think that everyone knows they should be eating lots of produce
Oh
and
yeah.
would even kind of over-report based on, geez, I should be eating. I'm sure I eat more. But it's a great point. I mean, it's a really interesting point about produce. So lots of just about that. You've got some more research coming out from the lab, I suspect, this year. Can we expect
Yeah.
more
Oh yeah,
stuff
absolutely.
this?
So we have a report. We're working on a report for October on salmon consumption. If you're
Hmm?
interested, that's coming out. I'm working with my colleague Stephanie Colombo on that one. We're also actually releasing just before Halloween a new study on allergies in partnership with Allergies Canada, and we're also launching this week a new survey on food inflation perception. What are
Oh.
people doing to save a bit of money before going to the grocery store and in the grocery store? So that's coming out early October.
Well, all right. Lots to talk about for the rest of the year, of course. So looking forward to that. We're back every 2 weeks. We'll be back on the mic, so we'll delve into all that research. Now let's talk about our new segment, trying
Yes.
stuff. So our first thing that we're trying came out from one of the people that I interviewed on as a bonus episode from the Canadian Grand Prix, which we sponsored, Nabati Foods out of Edmonton, and they
Yes.
make plant-based products. And
Yep.
I was watching his the president's LinkedIn feed, and there's a thing about this plant-based, no egg substitute, liquid egg substitute. I'm like, send us some. Let's give it a try. So you and I are going to try that. Now, here's for the listeners. Here's the process. So you and I earlier in the week have tried it once already and made it once already.
And we survived.
Wow!
We're
Don't talk
still
about it. Don't
alive.
talk about it. Don't talk about it. I've got to do a couple of things differently based on what I did the first time, and I'll explain what that is.
Okay.
And so then what we're going to do is we're going to pause the episode. We're going to pause the tape. We're going to go make some omelet and come back, and we're going to try it for the people and talk about our observations about eggs, EGGZ, eggs,
Zed, yeah,
a
and I think
a
we should mention
substitute.
to the audience that this segment is not sponsored at all.
Right, right.
These products are sent to us for free to try, and
Yep.
we're not asked to evaluate these products with some sort of bias. It's really me and Michael testing stuff.
Yeah, that's a great ad because I just reached out and I said, hey, we got this new segment. We'd love to try it. If you'd like to send some over, we'd be happy to try it and review it. End of story.
Yeah,
So thank you for that. That's a great addition. All right, so I'm going to pause the tape and let's go make some omelet. All right, we've gone and we've cooked our eggs. Let me see if I could. Here they are. Here's
yeah.
my eggs. Oh,
Here
look at
they are,
yours.
right here.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
Here's the product, just so everybody
yeah,
could see what we're trying. All right, let's give it a try, and we can
yeah.
talk about it. Oh, you're off.
Mmm.
I like the texture.
The texture's not
I
the
like
same as
the.
real eggs, though, eh?
Nope. Neither
Mm.
is the flavor. It's less eggy, obviously.
It's less oaky. Yeah.
Yeah.
The the yellow part of the eggs is not as pronounced with this particular product, but it's amazingly similar though. Yeah.
I like it. I mean, I enjoy the flavor. It doesn't leave an aftertaste.
No.
It's got a nice flavor. Now, in my omelet, I put in chives, salt, pepper, and mushrooms. That's about it.
Okay.
Fresh chives. And here's what I did different. Now, the texture might throw you off because the texture is not like a liquid egg white.
No. No. It's
It's a
firmer.
thicker.
Yeah.
Now, what I did different, and then I'd like to hear your impressions of the process. When I first made them, it came right out of the fridge because it's supposed to be refrigerated, and it
Yeah.
was very thick and heavy. And I'm like, I don't know how to cook with this. So typically, I'd break a couple of eggs into a bowl, put my
That's
ingredients
right.
in, mix it up. And what I found is this time I had a hard time getting it out of the bowl. So
Yeah.
I took it out for maybe 15 minutes in advance, and that really thinned it out. And in the instructions in the bad, he says if it's too thick for you, just add some water. So that's an option. And then I poured it right into the pan, as opposed to in a mixing bowl. Put my ingredients in it and mixed it in the pan, and that worked out.
Well, that's
perfect.
exactly what I did too. I just poured it. The texture when you're pouring, it may look a little bit off because we're all accustomed to breaking eggs. Pouring eggs out of a bottle would feel like pouring ketchup out of a bottle, but it may throw you off a little bit. But overall, I mean, the quality is not bad at all. Like if you're expecting the exact same thing, you're not going to get it. But it's interesting. But my question to you, Michael, do you think you can bake with this?
That's a good
big question. I actually got on Twitter yesterday, which I thought was a very good question.
We'll have to reach out to Nabati and ask that question. And I was on their site just reading up about the product, and I'm not sure I saw that. The other thing I think they could do that would help me is give me some kind of idea about like for like with liquid eggs, they say a tablespoon is an egg or something like that, just so I know how much is going to come together. Not a big deal. As you say, the consistency is more like a ketchup than it is liquid eggs. I like it. I mean, I would serve this to my friends and family. I'm at a boys' weekend coming up, and I'm gonna find some, and I'm gonna serve it to them and see if anybody notices.
But you're not going to serve them real eggs. You're just going to serve them eggs. That's it. Okay.
And just see what happens. Fun.
Because when you so yesterday we actually I prepared regular eggs and prepared eggs, and we were able to my family was able to actually distinguish both products very, very easily, in fact. But it really it's consistent with what I've been saying all along. I mean, plant-based whatever has to come up with its own flavors and its own expectations. Really, I mean, I actually think it's a nice substitute to real eggs. If you're not into eggs, I'm a big fan of eggs personally. I think eggs are the most perfect natural products out there. Really, I mean, it's just a perfect product. And I've said that to the sector. I mean, eggs are just perfect. However, and it will age well because there's no waste. It's just it's a shell, and shell are compostable. But if you're not into eggs, it's really a good option. Really,
it's very convenient. Congratulations to Nabati and their founders. Nice job. Exceeded my expectations, I have to say, in terms of flavor profile.
I was expecting some weirdness there for sure, and that's not what we're getting when we eat this product. So
it's kind of like you've always been saying, like for the flexitarians. Listen, if you want to eat meat, but you're going to have a burger, they're just two different things. I mean, that's where the plant-based, the super flavored, delicious kind of plant-based thing, but the ingredient deck's pretty big. The ingredient deck, that's not too bad. Anyway, this has been great. I love doing this. So we've got another one coming up next episode. We're going to do it all the time now because it both gets us to talk about the industry, plant-based, quality, and just it's kind of fun, right? So, I think having breakfast together.
I think we should actually call this our foodie moment.
Okay, our foodie moment. There we go.
The foodie moment.
All right. All right. Well, let's go for the foodie moment to Serge Boulanger from Metro. Talk about a foodie. He's such a senior leader at Metro. It's so nice of him. You and I both knew him from the trade. Real gentleman and so savvy. And it was such a treat to have the chance to talk to him. And he was so generous with his time. So let's go to that interview and let's hear from Serge. All right. And we're back. It's been a great episode. That was a great interview with Serge, as I said, so generous with his time and insights. And he's got his hand on the pulse of all of the issues you're talking about, from shrinkflation to Buttergate to the trifecta to everything, right? He's at that point, right? He's right there.
He
at that
knows
point.
people. People know him. He
Yeah.
knows the players. He knows the
Yeah.
stakes. He knows the challenges. Yeah, I respect Serge very much. A very knowledgeable guy. Him and I, we've spoken off mic on a regular basis, and he seems he really cares about the industry, not just Metro, obviously, but the industry as a whole, which is great.
All of our grocers, if I think about them, many are staffed with, real veterans, right? Like people who've been in
Mhm.
this industry. It's a lifelong passion. Like once you get in that industry, it's so amazing to be a grocer, highs and lows, but people have long tenures, right? So you look at
Oh yeah.
Metro, Loblaw, Sobeys,
Well,
these people
if
have,
I were Eric Laflèche, who's not a grocer really, he wasn't a grocer, but he's an
that's right.
excellent CEO. You would want someone like Serge as a right
Yeah,
hand
yeah,
person.
yeah,
He's
yeah.
perfect for the job.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fantastic. All right, last thing I want to wrap up kind of quickly is, and to the listeners out there who are listening to us on a podcast, be sure and check out our YouTube site because it's basically an extended version. You both get to see us, but it's an extended version. We're going to talk about stuff that I might snip out for time out of the podcast, but the online YouTube version is the full version. Of course, you can see us trying our eggs product. Let's talk about restaurants, the restaurant sector, the restaurant industry. It feels like everything we were worried about has come to pass. In
Yeah.
other words, we talked to people in the restaurant industry, and our assessment together, I believe, I don't want to put words in your mouth, was if you don't take this opportunity to change, you're going to be in big trouble. And they are losing people like you won't believe. You mentioned I was in Banff. I went everywhere was looking for people. The restaurants were only half open. Like you'd go and, hey, sorry, it's an hour to get a seat. Well, I see 20 seats. Yeah, we don't have a server. Like
That's right.
that's the problem. But then I went to all the cannabis stores, the retail cannabis stores. They were the only stores in Banff that had no help wanted signs on them. I'm like, huh. So there's Canna Cabana, and there is Spirit Leaf, and two or three other locals. And I said, well, how come you guys have fully staffed and nobody else is? Where are you getting your people? Because like, where are they coming from? They go, oh yeah, they're coming from the restaurants. Oh,
That's
interesting.
interesting. So
Yeah, interesting.
their retention rate is high.
Yeah.
Get it?
Good one. Look at you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, look at you. You still
But
got it, man. You still
but
got
your
it.
observation about the cannabis sector is really
Mm,
interesting. I've
mm.
never, I don't visit cannabis stores personally, just so you know. But it is an interesting observation. I think perhaps employees are looking for better working conditions, pleasant working conditions, and let's face
Yeah,
it, the restaurant business, as you just pointed out implicitly, doesn't really offer great conditions. And I've always,
yeah,
I mean, there's been this ongoing debate about the market being oversupplied with too many restaurants. I mean, it has come up quite a lot in the
mm,
last year or so. So maybe
yeah, yeah,
maybe this great reset is about reducing the number of restaurants so we can, take a step back and reconfigure the entire industry. And I'm wondering whether or not there's some truth to that. I've never been about quotas or
yeah.
seeing cities setting up like some sort of numbers. I'm absolutely against that. But I do believe that right now the question actually has a little bit more value than it used to.
Yeah.
Now I
Well,
don't
the
know about
barriers,
how
I was thinking the barriers to entry in the restaurant business can be lower, right? Get a space, start cooking. Everybody thinks they can cook,
yeah.
including me, by the way. So all the listeners should check out my new YouTube site, Last Request Barbecue. I got to get
I'm
that plug
actually
in.
shocked you don't have a patio yet in front of your house with all the barbecues that you have. I'd actually line up to go eat at your
Yeah.
place.
And listen, I'll be talking about that a bit later. We got plans. We got plans. Anyway, I don't want to beat up on the restaurant industry, particularly when they're down. And to be fair, many operators are fantastic operators that offer,
Oh yeah,
that offer great careers. And we don't want to tar them all with the same brush or
but
create
but I
some kind of
but I
stigma.
it's the family casual part of the
Yeah,
industry that really I think needs
yeah,
to be thought about. I mean,
yeah,
there are a lot of chains out there, a lot of chains
yeah,
offering the same food, maybe at a different price, but they have the same
yeah,
supplier. You know this, Michael. I mean, basically, when you look at the entire supply chain, if you go from one restaurant to another, you end up with the same food. Is that something we want? You
And you
know?
know who talked about that? You know who talked about that? One of our guests, Alexander Gill, who we've talked to, one of the best food reviewers, restaurant reviewers in the country. I love the way she writes. It is highlighting this she's back reviewing, and her latest review is like all these big chains have the organizational, operational horsepower to make it through the pandemic, to hire people to do these things, but it starts to be the homogenization of the experience. So this is a bit of the challenge. We got to
And
get the rest.
I think it's a valuable question to ask at this point, you know?
Well, I think
Yeah.
what we got to do is we got to get the president of Restaurants Canada back on the mic and check in and see how it's going. So look forward to that. Anyway, listen, a great episode. I think we could talk for a lot longer than this.
Oh,
It's a
yeah.
kind of a pile of fun. Lots of catching up to do. Lots more great content ahead. If you liked what you heard, you can subscribe on Apple, iTunes, Spotify, your favorite podcast platform. Please rate, review, and be sure to recommend to a friend or colleague in the grocery, food service, or restaurant industry. I'm Michael LeBlanc, producer and host of the Voice of Retail podcast and the all-new Last Request Barbecue channel on YouTube. Bunch of other stuff.
And I'm Sylvain Charlebois, the food prof.
Back in the classroom. Wonderful to see. Excellent. All right, everyone. Sylvain, have a safe week ahead and look forward to talking again.
You too. Take care.